Alright everyone, I would just like to take a moment here by stating for the record I support gab.ai in its struggle against its Australian registrar, but let me ask one thing. Maybe the people at Gab can respond, because I know yesterday they put out a tweet, and I think BitChute did this too. They're like, oh, you know, what, 66,600 likes on Twitter, so it hit 666 on the little counter, and they shared it out, and it was very funny for me because of my username. And I'm going to do everything that I can to protect these sites with my ideological weight to try to keep them growing. I suggest every one of you signs up for Gab. There's no reason that there shouldn't be another 100,000 people using it. The same is true of Minds.com, the same is true of BitChute. I'd still say the same is true also about VidMe. Because it's just, I mean, it's a user-friendly alternative to YouTube for other kinds of content. And it's less censored. It's more sane in the, there's no limited state there. No big problem with YouTube's old wave of ad-based censorship. It never affected me. But with limited state, I think YouTube has become a factory for circulating out there videos that they just can't be bothered to take down. But what's happening is that Gab had an Australian registrar, Asia Registries, I believe it is. And they sent him an email saying, oh, well, you're in breach of our terms of service, so we're going to cut your service. You need to move your domain elsewhere. You need to find another registrar. Since when has Gab broken the terms of service of these sites? I guess the idea is that these registry services, what they're attempting to do, it's backdoor censorship. If the site itself is not really posting any substantial opinions, it's obviously not involved in criminal activity or anything. They look at the user base based on what one person said, and they judge the whole site to be guilty by it. By the way, why aren't they threatening Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and a million other larger websites? What about Reddit? What about 4chan? But they're not going to touch them because they're big websites. Or conglomerates of websites. Like Facebook is more than just Facebook at this point. YouTube is more than just YouTube. Twitter is more than just Twitter in a way. They won't go after them. Hell, VidMe is practically a Reddit-style subsidiary in the first place. BitChute is growing, Gab is growing, Minds is growing, but they're smaller. They're all tech. So these registrars, I think what they want is an internet where there's a lot of censorship. And so they're just going to try to make life difficult for these sites. They might have to, my advice would be try Iceland or Switzerland or something. Try a country that has more respect than Australia apparently does for free speech. Because Australia can't get its act together. I don't know why you were using an Australian service to begin with. That's probably a mistake on Gab's part. I don't know, was it more cost effective? Was it more efficient? Did you get other goodies out of it? I don't know. Obviously, Australia, no friend to the concept that people should be able to say what they wish to say, and that guilt by association is nonsensical. But I stand by Gab. Gab is not, for anyone who's still wondering, Gab is not a Nazi website. Gab is not a fascist website. I'm a verified user on Gab. I'm not a Nazi or a fascist. I'm a libertarian. A lot of the other users there, if they're following me, they're probably not interested in fascism, because why the fuck would they be following me in the first place? They might be like a Trump populist. They might be like, praise Keck, but that's just a meme. That's not hate speech. It's not violence. It's a fucking frog. People need to get over themselves and stop being so outraged. And Gab pointed this out. It was right after this, like, well, we're going to sue Google for the ad store thing. That their registrar got involved here a few days later. I'm not sure that those would actually be connected. I think it may very well be just a coincidence. Strange as though that may sound, I don't think Google really wants that kind of problem when it's already achieved dominance. Like, ultimately, they probably want to serve the app in the ad store because it makes them money. But somebody complained about it. Some, Anita Sarkeesian or somebody showed up and said, well, this is filled with hate speech. It's filled with malice. They don't censor things properly. And we can't have that on Google. They're working with these other companies, but they basically, companies and NGOs, they were forced in many ways to bring them aboard. In many ways they were. Here's the Achilles heel of the big social media sites. is public perception can be swayed so easily by these groups that nobody dares to criticize because they're considered sacrosanct because of what they happen to talk about. It's sort of like Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson. Honest people know that they're corrupt, but no public official or media group ever wants to point that out because they know they're going to get sued, number one, usually in a frivolous manner, which means they get dragged through court. They're going to be defamed, and they'll defame them legally. They'll use a million proxies to defame them and say, oh, well, they must just be a racist or something. That's what they do. They do it all the time. They do it constantly. And so nobody wants to deal with it. They'd rather shut up. People need to stop shutting up and speak out when this sort of thing happens. Otherwise, they may be forced to shut up permanently, because one of these groups may come along and censor them. That's why I use Gab, I use Minds, I use BitChute, I use VidMe. I'm using WordPress now to host my literary content, not just Blogspot. I've stopped using Google Search. And it's no disrespect specifically to Google itself in its search capabilities. I'm just tired of being so reliant upon a group that is being bullied around by a bunch of NGOs. They should make a stand. They should know better. They stood against SOPA. They stood against ACTA. They stood against other waves of censorship online when their speech was going to be censored. What about for the users that are making these sites what they are? I don't see much defense of them. I see them at least implementing half-assed censorship. And so I stand against it. No, I support Gab completely. If you think Gab is a Nazi website, you either haven't used Gab and you're just listening to some jaded, boring third party talk about it, somebody easily offended, like the Housewives Club of the 50s or the Church Housewives Club of the Victorian era. You're paying attention to the moral pearl clutchers. Or you used it and you're being dishonest. Because clearly not. There are more evangelicals than there are, racialists on Gab. That's my experience anyway. And I get some flack for it. I'm StixHexNammer 666. I'm not exactly praising Jesus here on a daily basis. But that's just the way it is. Just because there are a handful of people on your site and they're not being censored in being out there doesn't make it a Nazi website. Like, there are plenty of people on like 4chan that post that sort of stuff. Meanwhile, cut back to a decade or so ago, and Bill O'Reilly's talking about, oh, it's a far-left website. It's like a communist website. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous how these people actually think, and there are people that believe them, or at least pretend to keep up appearances. Oh, yeah, clutch your pearls a bit. Oh, it's just so terrible that these white supremacists have found a site where they're not being constantly blacklisted. Well, who cares if they want to speak? I'm still failing to see on what objective moral measure these people claim to have a problem with the concept of others speaking freely objectionable as though they may consider that speech. Because I can consider it objectionable when I hear someone saying, yeah, we need single payer. You want more of my money. We want a proxy war. Nobody's trying to shut down people who are saying, oh, let's invade Syria. Nobody ever suggested censoring them. Which one's more harmful? You're suggesting to kill a couple 100,000 people? Or you're saying, oh yeah, white this, white that. Which one's more harmful? Stop being hypocrites your entire life. That's about all. Peace out.